Hello coders, this is Jared with Renaissance Coders, and in this video we are going to be exploring another feature in Unity 2017.1. Now, we have looked at a couple of the new features so far, but we have really only started scratching the surface of some of these features. Now, for this video we are going to be creating some transitions between CineMachine clear shot cameras using scripting. Now, I do want to make a note here that this demonstration is focused on getting our cameras to transition between one another rather than creating overly functional scripts. Now, with that in mind, let's take a quick look at what we are actually going to be creating. As you can see, I've just got a really basic level here, and I've got 4 clear shot cameras in my scene. So if I were to press play right now, we can see that our first camera takes over, and I can move this player around pretty quickly. And now I'm actually going to move to the left, and I actually hit a trigger collider there, which causes our camera's priorities to change, and now this camera takes over. Once I round this wall, I hit another trigger collider, and now this camera takes over. And now when I run to the end of this hall, we will see that a final camera change actually occurs. Okay, so that's the basics of what we're going to be creating. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is actually save this scene here. And I'm going to create a new scene and build out a level. I'm not going to cover the basic level design process in this video. Instead, I'm going to focus on getting our cameras into place and creating the logic that we need to get our cameras to easily change. So what I'm going to do is actually fast forward over the level design process. So if you want to copy it, you may be able to, but really we're just creating a really basic level, so everyone should be able to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay coders, so now I have completed my level. As we can see, it's just a really basic level that I've actually created here. It's a really simple maze that our player should be able to solve really quickly. And basically the plan right now is to actually have the player start right here with a camera at the end of this hallway, and then as the player moves out of this hallway, we'll have a trigger collider here. When he collides, we'll have another camera, most likely in this corner or this corner, that becomes active. So then our player can go through here, and then we'll have another trigger collider right here that will activate a camera on this wall so that the player can make his way around, and then we'll have a final trigger collider here that will activate a camera on this wall so that we can track our player throughout the entire level. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually set up our trigger colliders first. That will help us to know where our cameras should actually be in relation to those trigger colliders. To create these trigger colliders, I'm actually just going to do a game object, create a 3D object cube, and I'm just going to zero out the position a little bit, and I'm going to move my first one like right here, focus up on it a little bit, and I'm just going to move it into a pretty good spot where we know the player will have to collide with it. And of course we can update the scale to sort of fit this doorway or little opening here. Make this size a little bit bigger, and I don't think the player will be able to get through here without actually colliding with this. So let's go ahead and actually change this to a trigger collider and turn off our mesh renderer because we don't actually need it. Now I can actually go ahead and just duplicate this object because we're just going to move it over here so that once the player exits this door and turns to the right, he will hit the collider here. Of course, we're going to have to rotate 90 degrees in the Y, and we're going to move it sort of right on the edge of this door here. Now let's update the size a little bit, make sure our player can't slip past it. And that should be high enough that the player can't jump over it either. We could make it go all the way to the top of these other walls if we wanted, but I don't think the player is going to be able to jump over that. Okay, so we need one final collider here, so I'm just going to duplicate this guy, and I'm actually going to move it like right right up into this doorway here. So now let's go ahead and reduce the size a little bit more, and we're going to move it right into the doorway. Now we've got the 3 trigger colliders that we're going to need, so I can select all 3 and we can see where they're at in our level. So we're going to need 3 CineMachine clear shot cameras for this. So our first one's going to be on this wall. Our second one, we can play around with positioning either on this corner or this corner. I'm thinking this corner would probably work a little bit better, so that way the player can easily identify this as an exit. Once the player exits this little room, he'll go into this sort of hallway here where we are going to trigger another camera. Now this other camera is going to be located like probably right here on the wall, because we want them to be able to see the player as soon as he exits, and we also want to be able to track all the way around to this doorway here. Finally, once the player enters this doorway, we will activate our final camera here. Now we can already see that our hierarchy is kind of messy right now, so what we can do is actually create an empty game object, and we can just zero out the position, and we can just name this to level, because we don't really need to be seeing like the directional light, the plane, or any of this other stuff. We can just immediately sort of hide that very quickly. Now let's go ahead and actually set up our CineMachine clear shot cameras. To do that, make sure that you have actually pulled CineMachine into your project. You do have to get it off of the asset store now, so go out to the asset store, just search for CineMachine, and you should see the one developed by Unity. I think it's part of Unity Essentials, so you should be able to just see it. It's got like the CM logo. Once you find it, be sure to pull it into your project, and then you will get this top menu bar here that says CineMachine. You can click on it, and we're just going to create a clear shot virtual camera. Now when we create that, it actually creates a parent object for us that is our clear shot, and we have a child that is a virtual camera. And if we click on our main camera, we can see that we have our CineMachine brain set up here. Now we do have to actually position this camera, so I'm going to click on my clear shot camera, drag it back over, focus up on it a little bit, because we want to get it on this wall, but not so high up on the wall that we can clearly see over all the other walls. So I'm just going to move it like right there. Looks pretty good. Actually, what we could do is put it on this wall so the player comes towards the camera initially, so we can just sort of put it there. And I'm not going to play with the rotations, because we are going to do a look at for the player for each of these cameras, so it will automatically rotate and look at the player for us. I'm just getting the positioning on the walls like I want them. Our player is going to start right here, so we are immediately going to be looking at the player, and he can run towards the camera. Now for our next one, I'm going to go ahead and do a CineMachine, create a clear shot camera. When we create the clear shot cameras, it immediately creates at 0, 0, 0, which is actually pretty nice, unless you're working in like a huge world, and that can get a little bit annoying, but I kind of like it, especially for smaller little environments like this one. For this camera, I'm actually going to put it like right in this corner. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit, and we could play with the positioning with it if we don't like where it's actually located, but we won't know that until we actually play through it. Okay, so I kind of like where it's positioned there. Now we need to create our third CineMachine clear shot camera. So we're going to click on it, go to clear shot virtual camera. Now click on it, and we need to position this one in such a way that we can see down this alleyway or little hallway here, and down this one as well. So what I'm going to do is move it to like this side of the wall a little bit, so we should be able to rotate and watch the player as he goes down this hallway. I'm just going to move it up a little bit, and sorry, I know the level isn't really put together all that well right now. I just created it really quickly for this demonstration. So if we actually try to assume the position of this camera, we can clearly see that we will be able to see down this hallway and down this one as well. Now let's go ahead and do our final clear shot camera here, and click on it, and we're just going to position this one pretty easily at this back wall here. Try to get it sort of in the center of this wall, and just move it up a little bit. Very cool. Okay, now we've got all of our cameras pulled in. That's pretty nice. But we do need to go ahead and actually pull in a player, and for that I'm not going to go through character controllers or anything like that in this video. We do have several videos covering that, but for right now I'm just going to use a standard asset from Unity. So if you don't have that package imported, be sure to import that now. Okay, so what we can do is actually go to our standard assets, characters, third person character here, and I'm just going to go to the prefabs, and I'm going to drag in my third person controller here. Very cool. So now our player should start right here. Try to center him up a little bit. Let me toggle down the level, and we can actually go ahead and click on our clear shot cameras, and for our look at, we just want it to look at the player. And of course, when I update that there, it actually updates in the scene, so we can see that this camera is actually now looking at our player. And I can actually go ahead and set up all of these to look at the player. So now we can see that they all should be looking at the player, even though these cameras will not actually be active. Now let's go ahead and actually press play here. I do want to show you what the clear shot camera kind of looks like. So here we are, we can see the clear shot camera view in our scene, and we can see our character. Of course, when I move around, we can see that the camera is actually sort of changing the look at rotation and things like that. But when I hit my trigger collider, nothing happens. That's because we haven't done the scripting yet. So it is actually pretty easy for me to get out of view of this camera, and when I do that, nothing's really happening. And we definitely want it to be changing the cameras when we do this. So let's go ahead and stop this. And I have found a pretty easy way to actually change the cameras. The only issue that I actually see with the way that I'm doing it now is that it's not that pretty and it's not that functional, so we can't easily extend it. But again, this was created really quickly just to show you coders how I have actually managed to do this. Now I am going to go through the scripting for all of this just so you coders know exactly what I've done to actually accomplish this. So if I go into my scripts right now, you can see that I actually have several scripts already set up. 2 are from a previous tutorial, the light intensity ping pong and translate RC image. Those are from the video we did with the 2D sprite masking. The ones we're concerned with here are going to be the change to camera and the CineMachine testing. So of course I can just go ahead and create a new folder here that I'm just going to call test. You coders don't have to do this. I'm just doing this to hide the scripts I already have because we are going to recreate all of these. Okay. So it should move those out of the way. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is create a new script. So we're going to right click, create a C# script. And the script we're going to create here can be called Clear Shot Manager. Very cool. And we're going to go ahead and actually create 4 additional scripts here. The 4 additional scripts are just going to be used on our trigger colliders to change the camera. Now, that's not a great way to actually handle that. There is an easier way to do it where we actually create a list and check which object is hit, and then we can change everything that way. But I just want to get through that logic really quickly because that's not what's really, really important here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create those now. So I'm just going to right click and create a new C# script that's just going to be cam1 change, and I have to call it this because my other one was called change to camera 1, so I'm just going to call these cam1 change, cam2 change, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and create the rest of those really quickly. Okay, cool. Now we have all of the scripts basically set up inside of Unity. Now what we need to do is actually open them up and get to work. Now I am going to work the most in the Clear Shot Manager, so let's go ahead and open that up. And I'm actually going to go ahead and open all of these up just to make it easier for us to transition between them. Go ahead and full screen this guy, and I'm just going to drag these guys over. Okay, cool. So now as we can see, we've got all of our camera scripts that we're going to need opened inside of Sublime Text, but we are going to start on the Clear Shot Manager. And this script again is not going to be, you know, super functional or like an amazing script. It's just trying to get the Clear Shot cameras to change based on the priority assigned to them. So the way that this system is basically working is that our CineMachine brain will show the camera with the highest priority at the time. So what we're going to do is when the character actually enters into a trigger collider, then we are going to increase the priority of the camera that we want to change to and reset the priority of the other cameras that we don't necessarily need. Okay, so the first thing we actually need to do is actually add a using statement here. Without the using statement, it won't work, so we're going to say using CineMachine. And one thing that actually makes this a little more difficult is that at this point in time, I haven't really been able to find any scripting references or an API to easily review how to get access to CineMachine assets and classes and things like that. So a lot of this is really trial and error to make sure that we can actually get access to elements and things like that. So this is what I've actually found that works though. Okay, so the first thing we're actually going to do is create a couple of variables. We're going to need a public CineMachine clear shot, and we can just call this our camera 1. And I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this and paste it 3 times because we're going to have a camera 1, a camera 2, a camera 3, and a camera 4. And I am going to go ahead and create several Boolean values as well here. So I'm going to say public bool, and we're going to do a change cam1, change cam2, and I'm just going to copy it and paste it 2 more times, and we just want to do cam3 here and cam4 here. Now put a semicolon. We don't actually need a start function for this script, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. And basically what I want to do here is inside of our update method, I want to check to see if a Boolean value is equal to true, and if it is, I want to set our priority equal to something. So to do that, I can just say if change cam1, then what we're going to do is we're going to set our camera1 dot capital P priority equal to 20. Now right now, all of our CineMachine clear shot cameras have a priority of 10. So when we change this to to 20, the camera will take precedence over the others, and that should be the one that our CineMachine brain actually uses. Now, I actually want to reset the priority of our other cameras here as well, because if they are all equal to 20, then we don't really know which one will be showing. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that we have our priority being updated, we actually have to reduce the other camera's priorities, or set the other camera's priorities to something less than this camera's priority. So I can of course copy this, just paste it, and I can actually change this to 2, 3, 4, and just change these to 10. So now our camera 1 definitely takes precedence over the other 3. And of course I can just copy this now, paste it a couple of times here, and if our camera 2, then we want to set the first one to 10, our second one to 20, cam 3, first one to 10, third one to 20, and cam 4, we're going to set our first one to 10 and our last one equal to 20. Okay, so that's all we actually need to do inside of this script. All this is going to do is, if that Boolean value is true, then we just simply update the priority for the camera that we actually want to update, which would be for the first one, cam 1, cam 2, and so on. So let's go ahead and actually save this. Check to make sure we don't have any errors. Doesn't look like we do. Awesome. Now let's go back to our scripts here, because we actually need to go ahead and change a couple of, and fill out these scripts. So I'm going to start with camera 1, and we do need a couple of things inside of this script as well, but it is much shorter. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to say using CineMachine again, which we may not actually need here, but you know, it's nice to be safe with it, I guess. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a public clear shot manager that we can just call our CM here. Well, CM may actually be taken by CineMachine, so let's call it our CS manager. And inside of our start function, we're going to say that our CS manager is going to be equal to a typecast of clear shot manager, and we're going to find object of type, and we want to look for a type of clear shot manager. Okay, so this will actually search the scene and find an object of this type in our scene, so we do have to add it to the scene, but that's okay. Should be pretty easy. Now we actually want to go ahead and remove our update function here, because we are going to be using trigger colliders to actually change our Boolean values on our clear shot manager. So the first thing we're going to do is say void on trigger enter, and then we need a collider col, and basically all we want to do here is say that if our col.gameObject.tag is equal to player, then we want to change the Boolean value for our camera 1. So we're going to say CS manager dot change cam 1 is equal to true. And basically what this is going to do is set up that flag variable equal to true so that we can change the priority as we want. Now I do want to actually set it to false as well, so we can just easily say void on trigger exit here, and again we need a collider col here, and I can actually just copy our if statement and paste it here and just change this value to false. So all we're doing is saying when the player leaves the trigger, then we want to change this Boolean value back to false. So pretty easy stuff. Now what we can actually do is just copy all of this, save our first script, and we can just paste it into our next one. Now the one thing that we do want to change here are the change camera 1 to change camera 2, because we're in 2 now. And we may want to go ahead and just add using CineMachine again. And I think I'm going to leave that off on like the third and fourth ones just to see if we run into an error or not. Okay, go back to our third one now, paste it. And of course we need to change cam to 3, save it, and go to our last one here, paste it, and we're going to change to 4 and change to 4. Okay, and I did leave the CineMachine using statement off at the top. Again, I just want to see if we're going to run into an error or not. Doesn't look like we are, so that's cool. Alright, now one thing that we actually need to do is click on our third person character here, because it doesn't come tagged as player. So we want to click on it and just tag it as player here. The next thing we actually want to do is inside of our level, we want to find these triggers here. So let's go ahead and actually go down to the bottom, because I know which ones they are. They're the bottom 3. And so on our first one, what we want to do is add our cam to change script. Okay, so basically what this is going to do is our player is going to start off with this camera looking at him, and then once he enters into this trigger collider, the Boolean flag is set to true, so this camera here will have a priority change, which allows it to actually watch our player. So this one will not watch the player anymore, instead this one will, and then once the player exits, we basically set the Boolean flag equal to false. Okay, so on our next trigger object, we want to drag into our camera 3 change, and again, once the player enters into this camera will lose some priority and this camera will gain some priority, so this will become our dominant camera So now out on our final trigger collider, we just want to drag in our camera 4 change here. And now this camera will take over. Okay, very cool. Now the next thing we actually want to do is add in our clear shot manager function. We can really put this on any object. We could even put it on the level object because our scripts basically search for it and we'll find it. One thing we do have to do actually is set up the cameras for this. So we can easily just drag and drop these guys in because they are public variables. Makes it pretty nice and easy on us. Now let's actually go ahead and give this a quick test to see if it's actually working. Okay, so I'm in here. I've got my first camera looking at me. It's working pretty well so far. I move to here. I hit the trigger and now the camera changes to this one in the far corner. So it's definitely working so far. Now let's go ahead and try this other one. Of course, I can move through and exit the room. I've hit the next trigger and now this camera has taken over here. I can move around. And let's go through this doorway here. Very cool. So it's definitely working, and that's definitely pretty cool. This was actually pretty easy to set up. There's not a ton of stuff needed. Again, the scripts aren't as functional as we would like them, but they definitely work for this demonstration. You know, you can definitely incorporate this type of stuff into your game really easily. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop this because I do want to point out one issue with the way we're doing the scripting right now. So if I click on my 4th camera now, we can see that the priority is actually left at 20 because these maintain the updates from game mode to edit mode. So basically, once we complete this, we would want to have a final trigger collider over here that just resets to camera 1. So let's go ahead and actually add that in. I'm just gonna copy the one I've got right here, duplicate it out, move it here. And of course, this will actually make the player unseeable in our level, but this would basically be like your game over state, you know, so like you reach here or your win condition. You reach this position, you show your UI, and you would probably actually transition to a different camera other than the first one, but for right now, we're just gonna transition back to our first one. Now, the other thing I do want to actually point out is that right now we're using an ease in and ease out function to change our cameras. So again, let's go ahead and just press play because I want to demonstrate this to you guys. Oops. I didn't change the priority back down to 10. So let's do that. Let's stop it and go back down to 10 here and now press play again. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right, now basically what's going to happen is when I hit this trigger collider, we can see that our main camera slides from this position that it's currently at to the second position. So I've hit it, now it starts sliding and it moves over. We do have other functions that we can use to change our camera. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at some. So what we can do is actually click on our camera here and you can see that we have a default blend. So let's go ahead and change this to a cut for the rest of these because I want to show you this one because it's a little bit different than what we're used to. So let's go ahead and go back in and let's just see if this actually works. We're going to move over and hit it and it did not actually change. And you may be wondering why that actually occurred. So if we click on our main camera here, we can see that we have a default blend here as well. And so what we really want to do is change the default blend on our camera here. So let's change that and we're just going to round this hallway, go through our doorway again, and this time it should actually cut for us. There we go. So that's what a cut looks like. You know, it just immediately changes so that we are no longer at our previous position and now we're at our new position. So you may want to change around default blends to see what you like the best. I'm going to actually set these back to ease in and ease out just for consistency's sake here. But of course, we're going to be managing this on our main camera. Now, I don't really like the way that the cut worked, but we can go and do like an ease out. I don't want it to ease in necessarily because I really want it to try and reach that position fairly quickly. And then once we're pretty close to the position, it should be able to move out or ease out. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Oh gosh, I didn't reach the trigger. That's my bad, guys. Sorry, reset the priority on this guy again. There we go. Okay, so now what we should see is the camera sort of moving pretty quickly over and then easing out. Okay. We did get a little jitter there, which I'm not crazy about, but again, that's sort of okay for this demonstration. The other thing I do want to point out that we can actually change, so I'm going to change it back to ease in and out, is we can change the time it takes to actually reach the new position. So if I were to cut this in half and set it to 1, then we should see a much quicker transition between positions. Now, it may be a little jarring, but again, that's okay for now. It is a little annoying that I have to keep resetting the priorities. So one thing that you may want to do if you're planning on, testing this is that at the end of your script, just resetting all the positions via script. So sorry about that. I was talking while I did that. So let's go ahead and take a look at it at the next one here. and I'm going to go ahead and run into it. And we can see that is a much quicker transition between the two cameras. Of course, we can reduce that down even more, and that's going to make the cameras move even more quickly between the positions. Okay, and enter our last one here. And this time I'm definitely going to go all the way to the collider so I don't have to reset any priorities. And I don't think I hit the collider. Oh, I put the wrong script on there. So we definitely want to put the change to camera 1 there. So some of you may actually notice that when I did it. Sorry about that. Okay, coders, that is actually going to do it for this video. Of course, we're going to keep playing with CineMachine because it is extremely deep and there's a lot of stuff that we want to keep going through inside of CineMachine. And we actually want to start getting more of the timeline stuff set up in between CineMachine so we can start playing with more cutscenes and things like that. Let us know in the comments below if you would like to see a different feature of 2017.1 covered, and we will certainly try to create those videos for you. We are going to continue releasing videos covering 2017.1 functions as we continue going through this 2017.1 series. But again, we definitely want to know what you guys want to see, and we definitely look forward to seeing you coders in those videos as well. Okay, coders, I hope that you enjoyed that video. We are constantly adding new videos here on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It allows us to continue making great content for you coders. And if you are feeling extremely generous, please check out our Patreon account. Here are a few of our other tutorials just in case you want to keep on learning. If you become a patron of Renaissance Coders, you can get access to our source code and our project files as well. Okay, coders, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching.